page is now on Patreon. Patreon is a voluntary subscription service that allows creators like us to bring you more and better videos for you to enjoy. If you'd like to support our channel, head on over to patreon.com/edgelive to sign up as any level you want.
PaleoFAILs, Maleev's Therizinosaurus. The history of paleontology is rife with strange and intriguing alternate versions of animals we now take for granted. Last time we looked back at the paleontological past, we saw how the idea of Triceratops was twisted a bit out of whack. In this episode, we take a look at one of the strangest dinosaurs we know of, Therizinosaurus. If you are in the know, you'll recognize the name Therizinosaurus and immediately attach a strange and oddly goose-like picture to it. Therizinosaurus is the largest member of a group of theropod dinosaurs that adapted to live off vegetation, which is kinda unusual since the vast majority of the clade was carnivorous. For the longest time, we had no idea what it looked like. A completely enigmatic beast that defied description. We now know it had to be a member of a group, thus termed Therizinosauridae, that were very strange, sloth-like animals with pot bellies and long necks, used for gracefully stripping plants of their leaves and potentially for snapping up small animals that could fit within the beak-tipped snout. The Therizinosaurs are most notable for their long arms capped with 3 long claws, the use of which has been debated over for decades. Although we know the general appearance of Therizinosaurus, we still do not know exactly what it looked like, and paleontologists have extrapolated from other close relatives like Northronicus and Bipiosaurus as to what the body of this strange dinosaur looked like. However, as strange as you might think it looks, what it was originally constructed as is far stranger, if not super obviously, than just in comparison alone. When you hear about the dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous period, you usually hear of them originating from Asia. This is because one of the most prolific regions of the world to find fossil remains is the dry and despotically hot wastelands of Mongolia. The preservation of fossils in this area is so good that thousands of individuals have been found of many different animals, enough to name way more than just one species, a very rare occurrence with long-dead animals. The bird-like remains of what would eventually go on to be called Therizinosaurus cheloniformis were found in much the same way as many of the other fossils of Mongolia have been found. That is, as just one discovery amongst many during expeditions by entire teams and science departments to remote sections of the globe, to help further scientific knowledge all in one go. These are ventures that many institutions have undergone throughout recent history, most notably by the American Museum of Natural History, led by Roy Chapman Andrews during the Central Asiatic expeditions of the 1920s, and the Polish-Mongolian paleontological expeditions of the 1960s, helmed by Zofia Kylin-Jaworowska. Therizinosaurus remains were found as part of the Mongolian paleontological expedition as part of the USSR Academy of Sciences in 1918, and the very fragmentary remains were subsequently described in 1954. Prolific Soviet paleontologist Evgeny Alexandrovich Maleev named and described these remains. He is perhaps most well known for his naming, description, and research of the Tarbosaurus dinosaurs, for he was one of the first to take a look at dinosaur brains by cutting into the skulls of exceptionally well-preserved Tarbosaurus, a process now refined to computer tomography scans and 3D printing. The remains found consisted of ribs and the forearms. The least fragmentary part was one arm that preserved the shoulder girdle, humerus, radius, ulna, phalanges, and unguals. Immediately, Maleev knew this animal was something truly unique, a new group of animals no one had ever seen before. Unfortunately, he thought the remains belonged to an animal far removed from our image of it today. The ribs associated with Therizinosaurus were incredibly long and flat. The arms long and suggestive of an incredible musculature when the animal was alive. The claws at the ends of these hands were long, flat, and tall in cross-section. All of these characteristics did not say to Maleev that this animal was a bipedal, tree-munching sloth lizard. No. The remains suggested to him a giant ocean-going turtle, the likes of which the world has never seen. He compared the flatness, dimensions, and proportions of the ribs, as well as the arm bones of those of Archelon and Protostega, suggesting this new Therizinosaurus was the largest turtle to ever live, being many feet wider than the giant Cretaceous sea turtles. It was suggested that the animal used its incredibly long forelimbs to propel itself through the water, and the long, slender claws to slice through marine vegetation to eat with the blunt, curved beak it was assumed to have had. This reconstruction shows an animal without a hard shell, much like the leatherback sea turtles of today, being big enough to come on land and coexist with the marine and terrestrial predators at the time, much like the Archelon of the late Cretaceous Kansas. So the major inquiry here is, how did he get it so wrong? At the time that Therizinosaurus was alive, Mongolia was nowhere near as dry as it is today. In fact, there were lush rainforests dotting the sand dunes with rivers and streams lazily snaking their way across the lands, many of which connected to oceans. There were even beaches at the time. This suggested to Maleev that there was plenty of suitable environment for such an animal at home in the water. The remains contained a set of ribs, which were one of the main characteristics that pointed towards a testudine origin. However, the biggest problem here was the ribs belonged neither to Therizinosaurus nor a turtle. These enormous ribs turned out to belong to a sauropod, one of the enormous long-necked animals that lived around this time and place. And of course, because they are so large, their ribs are big and flat. These were the ribs used to compare Therizinosaurus to Archelon and Protostega and to declare that Therizinosaurus as a turtle of some new family. As it turns out, later finds of other theropod dinosaurs would go to show that these remains were far from the turtle side of the reptilian tree. The 1990s saw the discoveries of animals like Signosaurus, Bapiosaurus, and Nothronicus, all of which had elongated muscular arms tipped in long claws. The ribs were shown to be of sauropod origin, and thus thrown out of the holotype specimen. Further finds attributed to Therizinosaurus would include leg and foot bones, as well as more traditionally theropod-shaped ribs. And yet, we still do not know the exact shape of Therizinosaurus, only that it was related to forms that shared general characteristics with it, and that Therizinosaurus has so far been the largest of this group to ever be found, possibly measuring as much as 9 meters or 35 feet in length, being more than capable of defending itself from any hungry tyrannosaurs tenacious enough to attempt to secure such a powerful animal. The sands of time have not been kind to the remains of these animals, and our understanding of them will continue to be revised. But as for Maleev's Therizinosaurus, it has been thoroughly shown to be a forgotten misfit in the pursuit of advancement of scientific knowledge.